Sitting at my computer that day, I was in terrible pain. My intestines felt like they were being torn apart. It was a good thing I was wearing an adult diaper. I wanted to lie down, but I had to finish my work. My husband has been asking me to quit for a while, but I'm the only one in the family who earns a decent income. I want to make as much money as I can because I know I'm going to die soon, and I don't want my husband and daughter to starve after I'm gone. Don't get me wrong, my husband also works, and at a fairly respectable place, but the salaries in our small town are quite low. A few years ago, my husband spent a large part of his already modest salary on my education. It was tough. He gave everything and never held back for me. Only thanks to his support was I able to study and become a successful programmer, and now I'll do everything I can to ensure they have a comfortable life after I'm gone. After finishing another assignment for a client, I got up from my chair, and the pain intensified. The doctor had prescribed me daily walks so my intestines could empty, otherwise the unbearable pain. But cancer doesn't care that you just want to lie down without pain. I went outside and headed to the park. I barely saw any people on my way there, and the park itself was quiet. Recently, it's been getting harder to breathe. Most likely the metastases have already reached my lungs. Once my intestines emptied a bit, the pain subsided slightly and I could head home for some well-deserved rest. Walking past various stores, my mouth watered. Oh, how I craved pastries, chocolate, and most of all, greasy burgers with fries and sauce. But unfortunately, all of that is off limits. The doctor only allows soups, porridge, and light cottage cheese. Suddenly, one little store caught my eye. It had a sign that read, "Here, you can buy anything. Love, life, time." Quite a bold statement, I thought, as I entered the store. The salesman greeted me warmly right away. I greeted him back. I was very surprised by his height. He was a real dwarf. After looking around the store a bit, I realized they sold second-hand items, like a thrift store, but not just clothes, everything under the sun. I even felt a little sad. I guess I still want to live so badly that I'm drawn to such absurd signs. The salesman interrupted my thoughts. "Did you find anything you like?" I don't know why, but his harmless question made me angry. I snapped a little. You know, it's not nice to put up such misleading signs. Our signs aren't misleading. What makes you say that? Well, we're both adults here and understand that time isn't something you can control. Oh, but it is, the man replied. Then sell me some time, please. No problem. But first, tell me why you need it. Honestly, after those words, I wanted to leave. But I was curious to see what this man would say next. So I told him about my cancer. He listened to my story very attentively. You know, the man said, I can give you 10 years. Maybe a little more, but that will depend on certain circumstances. And what do you want in return? My immortal soul, I suppose. I jokingly asked this crazy man. No, I'm only interested in money, he replied. Oh, it's definitely a scam. He probably thinks I'm stupid, that I'll just hand over a large sum of money. I might be a desperate sick person, but I'm not stupid. I hate people who try to profit off desperate folks. They're the easiest to con out of money. But I held back again and asked, how much will it cost? I was curious what amount this scoundrel would ask for. Do you wish for someone's death? His question stunned me for a moment. There was probably one person who made me really angry, my first boyfriend from high school. Looking at the salesman, I told him my enemy's name, Kyle. The salesman looked at me with a smile. First love, it's like that. There's only a step between love and hate. How do you know that? Don't worry about it, just a guess. So, what did this person do to you? I didn't really want to open up to a stranger, let alone a charlatan, about my deepest hurts. But I was curious to see what sum he would ask for. After all, I won't be around much longer. I have nothing to hide. And I began my story. You know, I wasn't the most popular girl in school, and I was often bullied. One day, the most handsome and charismatic boy in class stood up for me. After that, we developed a strong crush on each other. For several years I did his homework and let him copy during tests, and he protected me. Many girls were jealous of me, and I won't deny I liked that. In the 10th grade, he constantly told me he loved me and would never betray me, and I reciprocated. In the 11th grade, a new girl joined our class. She was incredibly beautiful and even did better in school than I did. She quickly won his favor, and by the end of 11th grade, they bluntly told me that they had fallen in love and couldn't live without each other. I can't even describe the pain I felt at that moment. I really hoped they would break up soon, but no. They kept posting happy photos that only made it worse. And a couple of years later, they had a beautiful baby. Over time, I started dating a guy, my future husband, and I even began to forget about the traitors, when suddenly Kyle had the audacity to call me, and with a request, no less. He wanted me to help him build a website. I was shocked by his nerve, but I agreed, not out of kindness, of course, but with my own selfish goals. They wanted to spend all their money on some ridiculous figurines. I knew it was a doomed idea, and they'd go broke. Then we'd see how much they loved each other. But things turned out differently. Their figurines sold quickly. They even opened their own store, and now they drive a fancy Mercedes. They're so grateful to me that we've become family friends, and that makes me feel even worse. On one hand, I want to cut them off, but on the other, I like showing them that I don't care that they're together. Let me interrupt you. So now, thanks to you, they're living even better? And they probably often come over with all sorts of delicious treats, while you sit there in your diaper, drooling. Yes, you've got it right. Okay, let's make a deal. You'll give me 35% of your salary, and I'll give you the promised time. I understand you might have doubts, but I assure you, today you'll stop feeling pain. Just drink this bottle. He climbed up a ladder and reached for the top shelf. Yes, it smells disgusting, but today you'll be able to eat whatever you want, he said, handing me a vial of some elixir. My stomach hurt so much I could cry. I decided to drink the vial right there. It couldn't get any worse. After taking a sip, I nearly vomited, but the pain immediately subsided. Make sure you drink it all, or the pain will return. I pinched my nose and drank it all down. Come back to the shop tomorrow, and I'll have the contract ready. I was curious to see what kind of documents he'd prepare, so I agreed. Stepping outside, I realized how amazing it felt not to be in pain. I don't know what that charlatan gave me, but the pain was gone for the first time in a long time. Passing by another stand, I decided to take a chance and bought myself a hot dog. Taking a bite, I was ecstatic. It was so delicious. How wonderful. After finishing it, I felt a surge of guilt. I'd given in again. What kind of pain would I be in tomorrow because of this? How stupid of me. Never mind, I need to calm down. Maybe I'll be lucky this time. When I got home in the evening, I went straight to bed before the pain could return. When I woke up, I stretched. My husband had already left for work, and surprisingly, the pain still hadn't come back. That same day, I went to the doctor. After an examination, the doctors couldn't believe my results. My stage 4 cancer was almost gone. I asked how that was possible. The doctors said they'd never seen anything like it. I was so overjoyed that I ran to my favorite restaurant and ordered almost everything on the menu. It was all so delicious. I ate so much I felt sick, but not from cancer, just from overeating. It was already 8 p.m., and I suddenly realized I might be late for that mysterious shop. I had to hurry. I remembered it closed at 9 Mai. I managed to get there only by 9:20. I was terrified that the cancer would come back at any moment, and I'd be crippled by pain that I couldn't endure after eating so much. But surprisingly, the shop's light was still on, even though the sign on the door said closed. I started knocking. There was a click, and the door opened as if by magic. May I come in? The salesman cleared his throat theatrically. I lowered my head and saw him. Oh my God, how embarrassing. I forgot he was a dwarf. I apologized. Don't worry, I knew you'd come. So, are you ready to read the contract? I nodded. There were only 2 terms. First, to give 35% of my salary, and second, to invite Kyle, his wife, and their child over and mix in the elixir. What's in the elixir? Is it dangerous? Don't take offense, but that's not your concern. Without much thought, I signed the contract. What happens if I break it? You don't want to know. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the elixir spoils quickly, so make sure you add it to your friend's food as soon as possible. I said, okay, and headed home. I was in a great mood, and I felt fantastic. On my way home, I bought a lot of delicious food. My daughter and husband were surprised since I hadn't bought food like that in a long time. We sat down at the table, and I greedily devoured everything on it. My husband and daughter stared at me like I was crazy and tried to stop me. But I looked at them with joy and told them I was cured, then showed them the doctor's report. We all jumped for joy. The next day, I called Kyle and invited his family over for dinner. He eagerly agreed. In the evening when they arrived, just seeing them made me feel sick. They brought me a large bouquet, and I invited them to the table. When we sat down, I mixed the unknown elixir into Kyle's, his wife's, and their son's food. All evening they thanked me for my help, saying that if I hadn't built their website, they'd be living in poverty now. But instead, they can afford anything they want. How I hated them rubbing salt into my wounds. When they finally left, I sighed in relief. A year later, my income had magically increased significantly. While Kyle's family's fortunes took a downturn, it gave me satisfaction. 9 years later, I no longer worried about leaving my loved ones without money after my death. One day, Kyle called me. He was crying. He told me their son had been hit by a car. I felt a twinge of pity for him, but they deserved it, those despicable traitors. Of course, I didn't say that to him. I just pretended to cry along with him. After their son's funeral, I decided they'd earned forgiveness, and it was time for me to stop sending money to that salesman. If he wanted, he could take me now. After all, I no longer worried about my family's financial situation. Let this evil stop with me. I probably deserve punishment for the elixir I gave them. For a month, I didn't send any money, and surprisingly, the cancer didn't come back. One day, the phone rang. "I'm sorry, but your husband was killed today. Please come for identification." I quickly got ready. Opening the front door, I found a letter. I started reading. "I warned you not to break the contract. I expect payment today, and now you will send 50%, or your daughter will be next. Believe me, her death will be much worse." I decided I would kill that little man and ran to his shop. When I got there, it was closed, and a letter was hanging on the door. It read, "I suggest you send the money quickly." I couldn't risk my daughter's life, so I followed the instructions. After burying my husband, our life with my daughter became very bleak. At that moment, Kyle and his wife, despite their terrible loss, supported me a lot. I hated myself, but inside, I comforted myself by thinking they deserved what happened to their son. A couple of years later, Kyle's wife died under strange circumstances. He fell into a terrible depression. I knew for sure that when Kyle died, the cancer would come back to me. But I thought I had a few more years left. The main thing was that my daughter would grow up and turn 18. Otherwise, she'd be sent to an orphanage, and I was afraid that in that case, she wouldn't get our inheritance. So I promised myself to live a few more years at any cost. Recently, Kyle called me. He said he didn't want to live anymore, that he called to say goodbye and thank me for all the good things. I got scared and started begging him not to do anything stupid. He said that nothing made him happy anymore, and every day was hell. He started to say goodbye again, but I stopped him. "Kyle, wait, don't do this. I'm dying soon. I have cancer. Please, take care of my daughter." He started crying. "I'm begging you, Kyle. Believe me, you're still dear to me, and I love you. Move in with us." It wasn't true, but I needed to stop him. "Help me, Kyle, I'm asking you. I've always helped you." He agreed and moved in the same day. During this time, we had really grown close, but then something terrible happened. Kyle fell ill and died a slow, painful death. And I realized that I was next. When he died, thankfully my daughter had just turned 18, and the illness returned to me. As a final act, I decided to leave my daughter a letter, telling her the whole truth. I just hope she never makes the same mistakes I did.